Guys, let's talk about debt, specifically your government debt. Or we can look at the crazy people. We can look at the US, we can look at the UK, we can look at China. But everything I'm going to say here applies to your government as well. Okay. I'm the CEO of Orukka. Orukka is a smart payment ring. Okay. We allow people tap to pay. Right. So you don't need your wallet, you don't need your phones. What that also means is we don't work with any bank specifically, we work with all banks. We don't work with any country specifically, we work with all countries. If you have fingers and you like to wear rings, I don't like walking around with phones and wallets, you can order Orukka. So that means we're open. Okay? So everything I'm going to say here, I have no bias. I'm going to say something though. The debts we have today, the amount of money people owe, right? The amount of money specifically governments owe on behalf of their citizens is crazy. Okay. I have to put it in my apple for that. Like that's how angry I am. When I get angry, I eat my apple. I get super, super angry and drop the fruit. Okay. So let's talk about this for a minute. Okay. So I'll talk of the craziest people here in terms of numbers. Japan has got the highest, okay? And I've got numbers here, okay? So I'm not just making this up top of my head, okay? Japan has got one of the highest debts possible in terms of percentage to GDP. I'm going to say that because that's important, okay? When we talk of government debts, economists will jump at me on this one, right? And again, I'm a banker, so I can tell you the economists look at things from a theoretical point of view, okay, not in practice. Bankers actually look at it from a practical point of view, and that's the truth. We see the debt, we see the declines, we see the credit issues and the debts firsthand. Economists look at these things on a grand scale, a larger scale, okay? But we see these things firsthand. So you can see specifically when a customer does not want to take out a loan, you know why. You see specifically when a customer withdraws money, okay, and make sure that they have no penny in the bank because they don't trust the system. You see when a customer gets up and leaves and relocates to another country, not the economists, the bankers see this. They see, okay, we all know what happened with the CEO of Revolut. He left, he's gone to the UK, made his billions, it's gone. Politically, you can say what you want to say. Economists, you can say what you want to say, okay? But in truth, people see these things, and the world is a global village. Anybody can get up. You're watching this video now. Okay, if you look at it and your wife or husband comes to you and goes, hey, we're spending too much here. It's cheaper to go over the fence to the other side in Mexico. You would have to go. The allegiances are important. You would always say, here's the point. If you're African, okay, if you're Filipino, if you're from any part of this world, again, that's the issue I have with immigration. When someone immigrates into a country, they help that country and they help their home country. Yeah. So we're looking at the number of remittances, and I'm going to have a video on this one as well. I know I'm already rambling on with anger, but when you travel, okay, you're helping the country where you are as long as you're working, okay? So that's a caveat. You have to be working. And most immigrants work. Small percentage don't, but most immigrants, they work. I mean, you know, the US guys, when they travel, they just help the country they're in. Indians, when they travel, they help the countries. Go check the CEOs in the US, you know what I'm talking about. Same thing, the US, UK, Canada, Ireland, pick any country where the doctors are there, you can see they help the country. And forget what politicians say. They do that to get, votes and to get clicks, to get angry, to get people angry and riled up. That's how they get into power. And that's the truth, okay? But here's the point. When these people go there, they're helping the economy and they're helping their home economy as well because they send money home. Okay, and that remittances is huge. That's how Western Union became so big. And that's how blockchain and crypto is getting so big because, again, they're taking out the government at this point. I mean, if you're going to send money to your dad back home in Nigeria, what are you going to do? Go through the government to run a KYC and then pay them 25, 30%. It's your dad you're sending the money to. So crypto is starting to get into that. And that's the appeal or the allure where people are trying to say, wait a minute, the government is taking so much. And we'll talk about the government here. I'll jump straight into it, okay? So we're talking about Japan there. So Japan has got one of the highest debt possible in the sense that if they carry on at this level, they're currently at 229% of what they produce. So they are borrowing. If they borrow, at this point, they've got 3 trillion in debt, okay? If you're owing 3 trillion and your GDP is less than half, that means you're paying a lot more in interest every year, whether you're human or not. So if you're human and you go into a bank to take out a loan of 10,000, you pay 1% interest on that. Okay? If you go out the next year and take another loan, you pay more interest. So the more loan you take, the more interest you take, you're paying. It's the same with the government. Economists will argue and tell you, oh, the government can print money, so it's not the same. It is the same. They're printing money to people. They're printing money to someone who's buying the bonds, who's buying the treasury, the equity on the other side. It could be the rich, could be your pension, my pension, all our pensions actually buy the debts of the government. But someone's buying that debt. Therefore, the more they write, the more interest they have to pay. If you're watching this video and you're 35 years old, I can tell you you're going to pay interest on government debt for all your working life until you're 60. That's how long it's going to be. Until the government defaults or they keep printing more, they keep borrowing more. Now, if you borrow more, you're paying interest more. And as the percentage of your GDP goes up, Okay, I'll keep going on here. Greece is looking at 146%. That's why they got into trouble last time, because people just lost faith that will ever pay those interests. The people I mean are the rich, pension, hedge funds, governments, other governments buy debts. And if they turn around and say, hey, we're not buying your equity or your debt anymore because we don't trust you, the country suffers immediately. When I say the country suffers, that means your infrastructure goes down, expenditure on health, expenditure on roads, public good, public safety, things like that just go down, police force as well, they all go down. You can't sustain it anymore. So that's the worry we need to worry about. Talk about the US. The US at the moment, they're playing around with 122%. In terms of just interest alone, right? They're looking at roughly the next few years, the US, I see 1 trillion is what they were paying on interest. 1 trillion. That's a lot. So at this point, we're running out of numbers, right? Because we're playing around with trillions so much now, right? In the US, they're owing about 35 trillion in debt to people. 35 trillion. And it keeps going up because each successive government, you're not going to be the silly idiot who's going into power and then you say there'll be no debt and austerity. Look what happened in the US, in the UK. The UK tried that, and as soon as possible, they had to go borrow, right? Because every government is borrowing. Now, if you're going in there and you're not borrowing, your people turn on you. But then if you're borrowing, you're giving away to the rich. So it's a vicious circle that keeps going on and on and on and on. Okay, I'm not trying to sell crypto or other countries, other currencies that are a lot like gold. So gold, is finite. Okay, crypto, Bitcoin specifically, is finite. Okay, that's it. Those two, I think, are finite. You can't produce more. You can't write more. And to me, I would say, again, this is not financial advice. I'll say those are much scarce as a commodity, and it looks like those will be the future in terms of money. Because every country, I've talked about the UK, US. Let's talk about Canada. Canada, they currently owe 3 trillion as well. Trillion for a population that, again, people can barely survive. I think in terms of GDP per capita. When I say per capita, that means how much one person owes. Okay, I was looking at the stats the other day. So Ireland is very low in terms of debt, right? So they owe only 200 billion. So everyone's talking about trillions. Yeah, in the UK, 3 trillion. Italy, France, trillions. India, 2 trillion. They're going up to 3 very soon. So these guys are owing trillions. Okay, so Ireland, you might look at Ireland and say, well, Ireland is doing well. They're only owing 200 billion. That's really good. Not really, because there are only 3 million people in the country. So that means 200 billion split per capita across 3 to 4 million people. That means everyone is owing 90,000. That means the average person, walk out to the street in Ireland, the average person is owing 90,000 per capita. That means they need to produce up to 90,000 at some point to pay down that debt. Or they just keep paying interest all their lives. So they're walking around. If you think about it that way, every time you walk around and your government borrows money, you're paying interest. Again, for the rest of your life, like your working life, you could just end up paying interest. And it goes up and up and up. And the more you issue, the more cash you issue, the less valuable your commodity or your currency is. So this happened, I think everyone knows the story about Zimbabwe. It's also the same in Venezuela. It happened in Argentina, where bread was so expensive that people were wheeling out trucks, to just pay for bread, pay for the most simple things. That's true. And that can happen. Already it's happening, right? You could see how much, a loaf of bread was 3 years ago. Look what it is now in any country in the West. If you want to pick any country, see how much it is. So the inflation is going up. So the value of your money is going up, or its value is going down, okay, because you're using more and more cash to buy the same thing you would normally buy. That's where the problem comes in. Okay, so guys, it's a depressing thing. Okay, it's a depressing thing to think about. Okay, in terms of where it's going. You know, austerity is never something people want to talk about. Okay, or stability. But what I always talk about is being selfish. Okay, you need to be selfish. Not selfish to your fellow man, but selfish against you and the government. Okay, you really want to help the government, but you also need to think about yourself. Okay, so the question is, what are you doing to maximize where you are? Okay. For instance, if you're here and you're working here, if you're a plumber, you're working here, how are you doing to make sure that you are a business owner as quickly as possible? You own the business, you can grow as quickly as you can, and then outlive, so that if your country goes down, you go to another country. We're already seeing this. Again, it's a sad thing to think about. In truth, we see a lot of people who's got wars. If you pick any country that's currently in the state of a war, pick Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been in war for a few years. Here's the point: who do you think is leaving the country? These people are prepared. That's sad to think about, but the truth is, Syria, all those countries where there's war, the quicker you can leave there, the better for you. It was the same thing in the US. So the US, again, when Trump was going in, people hated the idea. And some people did something about it, others didn't. Okay. But people who left when Trump got into power, did better because they left with anger. If you leave a country with anger, you want to go back and do something. At the start of this video, I talked about immigration, so leaving a country and then sending money back home. That's the same thing with the US guys who left. So those guys that actually left are helping the US more by leaving. Okay, the same thing as well with the guys in Syria. Okay, so people in Syria that leave, they come to the country as quickly. Again, the point is how you get them to contribute to the economy. If they contribute as quickly as they come in, it helps your economy. That's the other point. So maybe I'll end the video with that as well, guys. Be receptive of immigrants. I know it's angry to think about what you're giving them, but think about what they're giving you. Yeah, I talked about Japan and the level of debt there. How do you think they got into that debt? Because they're aging, they're dying. I'm sorry, we're dying in Europe, guys. We're dying in Europe. I started this video. When I started this video, that was 10 minutes ago. I've aged 10 minutes. I'm dying. We're all dying. Okay, so we're getting old. But the downside is in Europe, we're not giving birth as quickly as we should. We're an aging population. So when you get to 65, you're going to need young people to pay your pension. Okay, you can call it what you want to call it. I think a lot of people call it a pyramid scheme because that's how pensions work. Okay, but in life, that's how it is. The young people are paying for the services of the older people. Okay, so if you're in a country like, Asia or Africa, those guys have a really, really young population. That means for every old person, you have 3 to 4 people that are actually helping and working towards growing the economy, while the older people have done so much, and then they not relax, but take their pension out. Okay, and the pension then is what the current people are working on. In Europe, USA, same thing. If you guys are getting old, right now I can tell you the rate is dropping. The average person is waiting until they're 35 to give birth because the country is just so hard. The level of debt is so high. If the level of debt is that high, that means the economy is tightening up. That means people are not getting married or giving birth as they should. And what do? You import them in a bad way to say it, but that's the truth. Again, I'll tell you easily. That's what you need to do. You need to go in. These young people that are coming in, if they're coming in, they're men, put them to work as soon as possible. They're coming to work. They're not coming to sit in a hotel. But if you put them in a hotel, that's on you. That's on the government. Okay, I remember in Switzerland. So Switzerland do this very, very well. So Switzerland, if you go to Switzerland, as soon as you get into the country, and this applies to Europeans, Switzerland is basically, everyone is neutral, right? As neutral as possible. If you're Swiss, put a comment here. Tell me if I'm lying. Keep me honest. If you're in Switzerland, you're in France. France is just around the corner. You can't move from France to Switzerland. You need to get a permit. And your permit is linked to work. You need to be working, or you don't get that permit, or you're out of the country. So they try to get you to work as soon as possible because everyone's working. The same thing as well in Germany. Germany is on the other side. Germany, you can go straight from Berlin, drive through from Stuttgart into Switzerland. Guess what? You're working as soon as you get there. If you don't, you're out of the country. I mean, there's no apology there. I mean, there's anyone who's fleeing conflict who wants to work. They're not fleeing conflict because they want to relax. But the question is how quickly you give them that permit and say, here's your permit, get to work. Because we're all working, rather than here's a hotel room, stay there, we need to process you, and then you process them for 3 to 6 months, sometimes years, right? You leave them on the system for years. Like, whose fault is that? Is that the people sitting there, or your government that's not giving them a permit to say get out to work right now? So you need to think about. I'm spending too much on this topic as well, but that's the future. The future is in Europe and the US. We're sitting here, and people are young people, able-bodied men. Okay, not the sick and elderly. Able-bodied men and kids are coming into your country. And you need to put them to work. Get them to help your economy. We in Europe, we're dying anyway. We're not giving birth as we should. Everyone's focused on work and career. Okay, those days, I mean, an average African, or Asian, any of these countries have 3 to 4 kids, right? So they're well, they're good. What you need to do is, again, I don't like saying this, but it's a drain power. Take the best, let them help you, put them to work. They help the economy. They help your country back as well because they also still send money home. So it's a global village that we need to start thinking about. The only people that don't want you to do this are the politicians. The politicians would rather have you protest. They'd rather have you fight each other. They'd rather have you complain about the current people in power. That's the whole point. They want you to complain and fight about the current people so they can come in to power. And when they come into power, you can see what they're doing. You can look and see what they pick a country and see what the current government is doing. That will tell you what the next government is going to do. And the next government is currently, they're already making you fight and kill each other, and fight and run after the wrong people rather than looking at their own government on what they should be doing. I'll leave it at that. Again, it's a lovely debate I would like to have with people. But as I've said with the topic, our GDP is really high. Debt is high. What can you do about it? Be selfish. Think about yourself. Think about your future, okay, and where you can move to if you need to. Take care.